Hi, my name is Robin Wong. In this video, I want to share 5 more tips on using the Olympus OM-D cameras. Very recently, I've made Olympus OM-D tips videos. If you haven't checked out these 2 videos, I'll leave them in the descriptions below. In this video, I'm sharing 5 additional tips that are not found in the previous 2 videos. Let's get started. Tip number 1. To get rid of the annoying info pop-up, just press the info button. Now, when you press menu, the camera will actually show you information that pops up, and annoyingly, it covers all the other menu items subsequently, right? You see it takes up a lot of space, and sometimes you can't even see what's down there or up there. And it can be really annoying, especially when you dive deep into the menu. So to get rid of this pop-up information, all you have to do is just press info. Once you press info, it just disappears. So don't panic if you need to understand what it is, say what CAF sensitivity stands for. All you have to do is just press info and the explanation will come back on. So just press on and off the info button to cycle between it on and off. And now that you can't really see what's at the top, it's really annoying. So just turn it off and you can see it again. Tip number 2, autofocus touchscreen settings. I know that this particular tip is not exactly new for a lot of existing Olympus users. However, I do think that this sharing will particularly benefit those who have come or migrated to the Olympus system and they are using the Olympus cameras for the first time. Olympus was the first to implement touchscreen settings in the camera, allowing touch shutter, meaning that you can take a photograph directly by a tap on the screen. Now, to enable or disable the touchscreen settings, there is a tab at the side here. Look at the icon. If it's all green, it means that by the tap off on the screen, be careful where you tap it, because the location, the exact point where you tap the screen is where the camera will autofocus, and that's where it will be sharp. So I'm just going to tap on the eye, and the camera took a photograph of that, and that will be in focus. Say that now I want to focus in the background, so I'll just tap at the background, the camera will focus there. This is the touch shutter or tap to shoot. As you can see, the focus accuracy is incredible and it is extremely fast. Now I want to tap the Lego Robin again. I'll just tap the eye and look at that. It was incredibly well. Coming back to the icon, to disable it, touch it again. When it's white like that, nothing happens to the screen when you touch it. It means that the touchscreen is fully disabled. And the next setting, if it's one rectangular box here, if it shows the green rectangular box, it means that you can move the focusing point around. Right? You can choose where you want to focus around the screen. And as a bonus at the side here, look at the bar. You can change the size of the focusing point. Of course, I would suggest using something much smaller like that. Then you can pinpoint the focusing area to make sure you have the exactly critically sharp focus. Just make sure you half press the shutter button before you take the photograph. I put the focusing point all the way at the side there, I'll half press my shutter button and the autofocus is locked. I repeat, there are 3 modes. If you go to this, the first icon shown here is immediately tap to shoot. If you change it to a white icon, nothing happens when you tap the screen. And the next one means that you change the focusing area, and when you do this, you can change the size of the focusing area as you wish. And now you have to half press the shutter button before you take the photograph. Tip number 3, setting lowest shutter speed for auto ISO setting. Since the EM1 Mark II, Olympus has included the ability to set the lowest shutter speed required before the camera raises the ISO when auto ISO is being used. This particular feature is available in EM1 Mark II, EM1X, and EM5 Mark III. I find that this feature is very useful depending on what kind of shooting scenarios that I'm doing. For example, if I know that I'm going to shoot a scene that is static and is not moving, I will then lower the shutter speed requirements for auto ISO. I can confidently handhold the camera down to half a second or even longer. This particular scenario is very different if I'm doing street photography. Say that I'm shooting people walking constantly on the street. to adequately freeze the motion, I need the shutter speed at least 1/250th of a second or faster. So it is very flexible to be able to set the minimum shutter speed in the camera when auto ISO is engaged. To change the ISO auto settings, go to menu, go to the gear, and we will find E for auto ISO. So once we have the auto ISO set here, we go in and you can see the lowest SS setting. SS stands for shutter speed. Then we can change it from auto to any of the numbers that you wish. Either it's 1/250th, which I think is ideal for street photography, or if you're not doing anything incredibly fast, you can slow it down to 1/20th or even lower depending on what kind of photography that you're doing. So this is fully customizable. I generally will just leave this to auto because if I were to change my shutter speed, I will go to the shutter speed priority and change it manually. But I think that for those who use auto ISO a lot, this will be quite useful, especially when you shoot in aperture priority mode. Tip number 4, Live View Boost on 2. With the Live View Boost on 2 being turned on, your camera can see in the dark. I am not kidding. This particular setting was added first in the Olympus OM-D EM5 Mark II. Subsequently, all Olympus cameras after that have the Live View Boost on 2. However, just a side note, Olympus decided to remove Live View Boost 2 from 2 of their current cameras, which is the EPL9 and the EM10 Mark III. All the other cameras currently from Olympus that have Live View Boost 2. Now, when Live View Boost 2 is enabled, even in a very, very dimly lit condition, say out in the open when there's completely no light, under the sky full of stars, just the stars, the camera can still see perfectly clear. That's how powerful your Olympus OM-D camera is. As long as there's a little light to work with, just a little light, it is sufficient for the Olympus OM-D camera to work. Now, only activate this setting when you need it, especially when you shoot in very, very, very dim condition, because by turning this on all the time, you lose the ability of what you see is what you get as you compose, meaning that when you change your exposure settings like shutter speed, aperture, and ISO, the changes in exposure is not simulated live in your preview when you look at the LCD screen or OVF. Also, the second reason is when Live View Boost 2 is activated, it drastically slows the camera down. Everything becomes laggy and the camera operation is less smooth in comparison to without using the Live View Boost. So only use the Live View Boost 2 when absolutely necessary. Finally, tip number 5. This particular tip is to help those who are migrating from DSLR to Olympus cameras where they are not really used to using electronic viewfinder. I understand that the optical viewfinder provides a very pleasant shooting experience. You're looking at the world exactly as your eyes see it. I was also one of those who complained about the electronic viewfinder when it was first introduced. However, it took me a while to get used to it, and I find that there are a few settings now in the Olympus OM-D cameras that greatly help you to transition from optical viewfinder to electronic viewfinder. The first one being S-OVF, or Simulated Optical Viewfinder. When S-OVF in Olympus camera is activated, the S-OVF will try its best to simulate as close to real life, as realistic as possible when you view through the electronic viewfinder. There are 2 important things that change when S-OVF is activated. The camera will try its best to emulate the color of real life situation regardless of any white balance setting that is being applied. So the S-OVF gives you a very natural and true to life looking colors. The S-OVF will try its best to maintain the balance between the dark and the bright area, and you'll get a very balanced looking image, just like what your eyes see in real life. I personally admit that S-OVF is not really an optical viewfinder, but the simulation really helps if you are coming from an optical viewfinder, and it can gently ease you in to the electronic viewfinder shooting experience. To activate the S-OVF, go to the camera menu, go to the gears again, and find I. There is S-OVF down here. Let's see what the info says. Select EVF display mode. Go in, you can turn on. It's a simulated view. as if it's seen through an optical viewfinder of an SLR. Bear in mind that the S-OVF effect is only applicable for view through the EVF, not on the LCD screen. The second thing I want to talk about when it comes to the electronic viewfinder is high frame rate per second. High FPS is valid for two cameras currently. If you're using the Olympus EM1 Mark II and EM1X, there is a setting in the camera to allow high FPS setting. FPS basically means frames per second. So instead of the constant 60 frames per second preview that you see on the EVF and the live view, once the high FPS is being engaged, you will get a full high refresh rate of 120 frames per second, which will be very smooth, lag-free. This will definitely help for those who are shooting sports, action, and they want as minimal delay as they can get from their Olympus OM-D cameras. To find a high FPS setting, again, go to the gear, find D2, frame rate. From normal, you can change to high. Once this is activated, it will increase the frame rate both in the LCD screen as well as the EVF. You'll see a tiny icon of FPS and the arrow up here that shows that your LCD and EVF refresh rate is at 120 frames per second. If you're not shooting anything extremely fast moving, if you're not capturing that split-second moment, if you're doing landscape photography, if you're doing still life, if you're doing portraits, or just general street photography, people don't sprint 100 meters per 10 seconds, right, in real life. So in those typical shooting scenarios that make up like 99% of the time, there is no need to turn on the high FPS setting. Use it only when necessary. Also, may I remind you, as I've mentioned in my first OMD tips video, in case you didn't see the video, in case you do not know, the electronic viewfinder drains a lot more battery in comparison than the use of the LCD screen at the back of the camera. There you go, my 5 additional tips to help improve your shooting experience using the Olympus OM-D cameras. A lot of these settings are situational, only use them when necessary. Don't turn all the settings on at all times. I hope you have found these settings beneficial. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing to this channel, and I will definitely try my best to do more videos similar to this in the future. Until then, please remember to go out and take more photographs. Bye-bye.